Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Salt Lake City Snowhawks expansion franchise here on Madden 25. In this episode, we're just doing a Year 5 recap, so we're going to jump around, look at some league leaders, look at the NFL standings, and kind of preview what to expect from here on out. Next episode, we're on Monday Night Football against the 8-1 Kansas City Chiefs. Our Snowhawks at 8-2, which will mark the top two teams in the NFL, the best team from each conference, so that might be a preview of what's to come in Super Bowl 63. But to get started in this episode, we will check out Mock Draft 2, as that is now hot off the press. The Raiders and Bucks still projected 1-2 in the draft. John McPherson still the number one pick here, projected out of Louisville, offensive tackle, 6'6", 310. And, seeing as that we're pretty down in the draft this year, we're going to be probably in the 20s to 30s. We haven't poured many, if any, resources really into these top prospects. Nick Freeman is the second overall prospect on the board, and he goes to number 2 here to the Bucks in the mock draft. 6'3", 201 playmaking wide receiver out of Clemson, as the Bucks are now without Mike Evans, who's retired, even spent a couple years with the Raiders first, and also Chris Godwin probably retiring here shortly as well. Chicago Bears at 3 going Brandon Foster. He had a really positive draft story on him, so probably going to be a good prospect there for the Bears, who also went pass rusher in last year's first round. Ben Bell here to the Detroit Lions, as 2 NFC North teams here in the top 4. Bell, another tackle out of Oregon. James Trenkle here, pass rusher to the Giants at 5. Last year, there was only one cornerback selected in the first round. That was Daniel Weary to the Ravens at 29. This year, we have one at number 6, Kevin Middleton out of Minnesota to the Commanders. Thomas Falk, offensive tackle to the Falcons. Josh Hurst, DN to the Panthers. Virgil Morton here, a top 5 projection, goes 9 to the Titans. Broderick Foster out of Missouri, power rusher to the Jets to round out the top 10. Then Miami here at 11 goes Drew Kavanaugh, power rusher out of Michigan. He's up 10 spots from the last mock draft. Wyatt Robinson, a good offensive tackle out of Ole Miss to the Saints. Cornerback Alonzo Williams to the division rival 49ers at 6'3", 208, some good size there on the outside. CJ Stanley, the top interior offensive lineman, going to the Bills. The reigning Super Bowl champions, not even projected to make the playoffs at this point. Alex Costello, power rusher to the Patriots, another corner here to the Steelers. And now here in the bottom half of the first round, we are going to have more guys that we're targeting that are going to be more realistic options. We really like Ramon Starks, but he goes off the board very early in this mock draft. 6'6", 278, probably can play on the inside in sub packages on the outside in base sets. Already has C for block shed and finesse move, but is a power rusher, which is at A to C. So if that comes back as an A or even a B, I think that would be a really good sign, as Starks would be a top option for us in the first round, but maybe not going to make it all the way to our pick, which we're hoping is at 32. Peter Ross here down 11 spots from the last mock draft. DN out of Central Michigan going to the Browns. Offensive tackle Brandon Meyer to Denver. And Matt Skandrick here out of Michigan State. We really like him, 20th to the Colts. Not a scheme fit, but with that size and the skill set, I think he can be really imposing on our offensive line at 6'8", 339 with B for run block so far. Going to have great to elite for change of direction at his size, which is a good sign. Good to great for strength, and only B for run block and run block power so far. So depending on what those finesse traits come back as, Skandrick could be a target for us in round 1. Also another tackle here, Anthony Bryant going to Houston. Aaron Weber, DN, going to Dallas. Kevin Costa, pass rusher, going to Green Bay. Another couple corners here. One to Minnesota, one to the Chargers. And then we get to Ed Stockton here at 26 to the Jaguars. Another player on our radar in this year's first round at 6'1", 302, 21 years old out of Auburn. Run stopper with that B block shed, but also B power move and C finesse move. Athletically has great to elite for jumping. Good to great or solid to good in every other category, with A for play rec, C awareness. So I like Stockton a lot. He also had a draft story on him earlier in the season. And also Trey Hurst, who's a teammate of Ramon Starks at Penn State, who we mentioned earlier. He's definitely more of an interior guy though at 6'4", 302. B for power move as a run stopper. Also C finesse move. That block shed going to be A to C. Great to elite for strength, which we always love on a defensive tackle, with A play rec to go along with that. B impact block and B tackle. So Hurst, I think, out of all these guys we've talked about so far, maybe our most realistic option, although he is off the board one pick before us, which, again, they have us going fullback. I don't know why they keep projecting us a fullback in the first round. Deshaun Fleming out of TCU. And then down the board, a center here, Josh Jackson to the Eagles. Byron Jennings, an offensive tackle out of Alabama to the Chiefs, who's someone we might consider in this scenario. 6'4", 324, 21 years old out of Alabama. A for awareness, B for run block. Athletically, though, not really checking many of the boxes. Going to probably be heavily trait dependent is Jennings, especially those finesse grades. But although C for pass block finesse is decent to start, And then we have Roman Saunders, the top tight end in this year's class, who actually we probably would select in this scenario at 6'2", 248 out of Boston College. Vertical threat already has A for catching traffic, A for deep route, physicals, everything good to great or great to elite except the acceleration, skills. Also has B for break tackle, spec catch, A medium route, catching traffic, and deep route. So the traits are already looking really good for Saunders. Probably going to test well in addition to that. So if we don't sign our big target in Travis Weldon, a tight end from the Ravens in free agency, I think Saunders more than likely is going to be our target in round 1 this year. And the Bengals, projected Super Bowl champions at this point, going Kerry Stark out of LSU. And now looking at the overall draft board, the top prospect in this year's class is actually Stephen Cole's quarterback out of Pittsburgh, 6'5", 224, and he was not even mock draft there in this past mock we just looked at or at mock draft 1, and it's hard to envision the top prospect on the board does not even get drafted in the first round altogether with A, short accuracy, B for medium, and even despite his size, he's an improviser. I thought he was going to come back as a strong arm quarterback, but not the case. But I mean, the Bills are set to lose Josh Allen to free agency. The Eagles are set to lose Jalen Hurts to free agency. So we'll see what happens. If he falls that far down the first round where one of those contenders can take him, I think they certainly would. There's also a quarterback here in the top 10, Stephen Colvin of Houston, and also Kenny Weaver here at 14 out of TCU. Both of those guys, strong arm quarterbacks. So not really a strong quarterback class, only 5 draftable prospects according to projections. So luckily we have our guy. We'll see what happens though, especially with Stephen Coles. I mentioned the Eagles and Bills losing their quarterbacks, but also I think the Raiders could definitely be in line for drafting someone, maybe even the Browns. But I also did want to talk about this tight end class because we just mentioned Roman Saunders, the top prospect probably that we're looking at in this year's class, because anyone higher than him probably is not in our range. But we also really like Junior Washington here, 6'2", 250 out of Oregon. He might even be a little bit more athletic than Saunders, but traits-wise, I think Saunders is more of a polished product. Washington's like a step down pretty much in every category, but still does have that A for medium route, B for deep route, but probably not going to offer anything as a blocker. So we definitely would like to address tight end in this year's class, but it's a very deep tight end class. You see here we have a bunch of favorited guys here going from round 3 to 4 to day 3. And I think all of them are going to test pretty well. J.R. Copeland here out of Notre Dame, someone we like. 6'3", 245 possession tight end out of Notre Dame. 8 catching, B for run block. Good to great for speed and strength, which are 2 pillars I think that we look for in our players. And it looks like he's going to offer a little bit of upside as a blocker as well, and produce as a possession tight end. And also Justin Rogers here, 6'5", 252 out of Alabama. B for catching traffic, A catching, C for deep route. The run block going to come back A to C with great to elite for strength, good to great for speed. Good building blocks there, and has A for pass block, B break tackle, catching traffic, A for catching, C for deep route. So probably the best size of any of those guys we were just looking at. And then there's also Roosevelt Howell. He has even better size at 6'6", 275 out of Ohio State. So all these guys very imposing. Howell also has good to great for speed, jumping, agility, great to elite for strength. And traits-wise looks very good with A, short route awareness, B for medium route catching, but we'll see what everything else comes back as. But like I said, we really like Roman Saunders, even Junior Washington there, but I don't think we need to force tight end early on because I think it's shaping up to be a very deep class. We could probably get an impact guy in the third round or maybe even going into day 3 with a bevy of guys here that we have our eye on. So I think offensive tackle might be the most realistic option in the first round this year. Matt Skandrick hopefully falls into our laps, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Someone might have to trade up for going over to right tackle. Really no one here. I think Anthony Bryant, also Wyatt Robinson going to be off the board by the time we pick. So I think it's very realistic that we can just trade our first round pick entirely, maybe to acquire a superstar. There are a couple big names on the market, such as Dexter Lawrence, Quinnen Williams. So maybe we can move that first rounder and just get someone we know is going to produce for us. But we also really like Ed Stockton at D tackle if we don't go that route of maybe trading for someone. Also, Max Crosby is available as well. So we'll see what we like to do. But we do like this defensive tackle class as well. Raekwon Greenberry out of Auburn, someone we really like, 6'5", 305, run stopper archetype, but B across the board for block shed, finesse move, and power move. Looks to be a solid athlete with solid to good in every category or better with A, player act, B, awareness, B, finesse move, as we saw as a run stopper. So I think he has a lot of traits and going to be a good athlete as well. Clayton Johnson ahead of him out of Wisconsin. Ronaldo Bryson out of Cal. Also a couple guys here in round 2 to 3. And Carlos Childers, 6'3", 352 out of Florida. Definitely a nose tackle type of guy with C, block shed, finesse move, and great to elite for strength. So he's definitely interesting. And he has A for player act, B, awareness, but that pursuit probably going to be low at his size, you would think. But there's even a couple guys here on day 3 that we're looking at as well. So a very deep D tackle tight end class, I think. But like I said, I think we're definitely in the market to maybe even trade our first round pick entirely and make a splash that way. As I think, as a contender, finally at this point in the expansion franchise, I think our team is set to make a splash and bring in an impact player via trade. And speaking of trades, the trade deadline actually did just pass, and there was a couple moves that we want to look at right here. So Travis Etienne was traded from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Los Angeles Chargers in exchange for cornerback Dontre Franklin, who was drafted over the course of this franchise, along with a 4th-round pick next year and a 7th-round pick in this year's draft. He also signed an extension right after the trade, so it looks like he'll be a Charger for the next 3 years or so. The Patriots traded Ruben Fitzsimmons to the Titans. He was a former top 5 pick in this franchise, but just really never could get it going there in New England. I think now in his 3rd season as the Patriots acquire veteran middle linebacker Jack Sanborn, along with a 6 in this year's draft and a 7 in next year's draft. So I do kind of like that trade for the Titans, bringing some upside up front. Hopefully a change of scenery will do him well. And actually both those Jags picks that they acquired are future picks, one for 2030, one for 2031. And at this point, we're at the 2029 NFL draft as the Raiders and Seahawks also make a trade. The Raiders trade tight end Larry Knight and a 5 and 7 next year in exchange for Clark Brinks, a right guard, as the Vegas Raiders trying to shore up that offensive line, currently the worst team in the NFL. And now looking at the re-signings, we see Fitzsimmons signed 2 years, $30.5 million contract with the Titans, pretty much making $15 million a year now there in his new stomping grounds. The Chargers re-signed Travis Etienne to pretty much 9.1 per on a 3-year contract, going down to Matthew Torrance here. We re-signed him 5 years at $67.5 million. And the week before that, we were able to lock up Marvin Harrison Jr. to a 4-year, $103 million contract, which now really just leaves us with 2 priority re-signings we're going to look at here shortly in this episode. The Raiders also re-signed their newly acquired guard there, Clark Brinks, to a 1-year extension. And now looking at our extensions, as we saw, we already were able to lock up Matthew Torrance and Marvin Harrison Jr., but Caleb Patton is now the priority, 84 overall run stopper, but up to 87 with the morale boost, team performance boost. And he's actually among the leaders in sacks this season, up to 12, which is double of what his previous career high was, 12 tackles for loss. And we still have 7 games left here to play. We drafted him in our inaugural draft class, 4th round out of San Diego State, and he's definitely in line for his first Pro Bowl season, as he has absolutely dominated. So his original demand was 3 years at $50 million. We just gave him a 5-year contract offer at $47.5, and we'll just go ahead and make that an even $100 million. Will go salary at $10 million, the bonus at $10 million, as we try to lock him up long term. And he says he would like to play for a new team next year. We thought that was going to get it done, a 5-year, $100 million offer, which was far more than what he was originally looking for. So Patton declines our offer, and that's going to bring us probably to a franchise tag. I'm assuming it's going to be worth as much as we're willing to pay him anyway, so hopefully following that franchise tag we can bring him back on a long-term offer. But I was not expecting him to decline that offer. And now Randy Samuels here, part of that same draft class. I think he was drafted there in the 3rd round out of South Carolina. He's been a starter every year since being drafted. 81 overall agile lineman with 91 strength, 90 lead block, 92 impact block, but the run block power, pass block power, very low there in the low 70s, but otherwise has been a very solid player for us. I think he was looking at 2-year extension, which would be totally fine on our part. Didn't want much guaranteed money either. Or so actually, it's a 2-year at $15.3 million. Last time we offered him 3 years at $9.9, and he did reject that. So we will bump it up. We'll go 3.8 on the salary guaranteed. We'll go to 3.4. So that would be 3 years at $21.6 for 7.2 AAV. And we'll actually bump the salary up to $4 million, make it $22.2. As he appreciates the offer, but he is also going to test out free agency. So we whiff on both of those, as both of these guys are set to hit free agency in Caleb Patton and Randy Samuels, which now makes right guard more of a need than we expected. So we are going to have to monitor that. But Caleb Patton more than likely going to get that franchise tag. Maybe we can explore trade offers for him, as he's clearly not happy for some reason here in Salt Lake City, or maybe with his explosion during this season, he wanted even more than what we offered. But that's going to do it for re-signings and looking at the draft and all that. Now we are going to shift gears into the review part of this season recap episode so far, and we will get a standings check here as the Kansas City Chiefs atop the standings here at 8-1, point differential of plus 111 so far in this season. Of course, we're set for battle with them in the next episode on Monday Night Football, as a battle of the league's top 2 teams are Snowhawks at 8-2, and of all the teams here in the top 7, we're the only team that has not had our bye week yet. Next episode, after we play that game against the Chiefs, we're going to simulate the following week and then simulate through the bye week. So in the episode that follows, we should be up to, I think, week 13 or week 14 at that point. But the Ravens-Bengals here battling for that AFC North as we expected, both towards the top of the league. The Eagles here have now won 7 straight games after starting 0-2. The Rams here at 7-2, our biggest competition so far in the division. The Jags started 6-1, but now have lost 2 straight games. Vikings up here, which is kind of a surprise. We expected them to be at the bottom of the NFC North this season. The Texans, Colts up here at 6-4. We will go down by division now. And the Bills at 5-5, expected to win the AFC East by a good margin. But the Jets, Patriots, even the Dolphins here at 3-6, still in the mix. Although I'm expecting the Bills with a strong second half of the season to kind of pull away there. Now going to the AFC North, the Ravens, Bengals here tied at the top. And the Browns at 6-4 is a huge surprise, I think. I know they have a very good defense, but offensively, not much to write home about. But even then, 6-4, currently holding a playoff spot with the Steelers at 5-4. So every team in the AFC North right now over 500. Very tough there. AFC South now the Jags at 6-3, closely followed by the Texans and Colts here at 6-4. Each of those teams still need their bye week, and the Titans here at 3-7, in line probably for a top 5, top 10 pick. And now in the AFC West, of course, the Chiefs leading the way. The Broncos and Chargers here tied up at 6-4, both very good football teams. But the Raiders at 2-7, maybe the worst football team in the league, in my opinion. Now in the NFC East, the Eagles at 7-2. The Cowboys again in line probably for a wild card spot here, sitting at 5-5. But the Commanders and Giants both towards the bottom of the NFL, each at 2-7. And now going to the NFC North, Vikings at 6-4 to our surprise, as I said, leading the way. And the Packers at 5-4 was our pick to win the division in the preseason. And they are battling here very tightly with Minnesota. The Lions, though, a huge regression after they lost like 10 starters from last year's team. A very bad cap situation there. So I think they're in line for hard times here again in that franchise history. And Chicago, maybe the most disappointing team in the league, sitting here at 2-8, have lost 5 straight games, as have the Lions. And now the NFC South, the worst division maybe of all time, just pitiful. The Saints at 4-5 leading the way, and the Panthers, Falcons only a game out of leading the division. They're both at 3-6, and the Buccaneers actually the worst record right now at 1-8, a 111 winning percentage, and they're minus 90 so far this year in point differential, as they're now falling on hard times. Now going over to our division, our Snowhawks leading at 8-2, the Rams very close behind at 7-2, and we went 6-0 to start the season. We were sitting pretty. We didn't even have any other team in our division on our radar. We started like 4-0 in the NFC West, even beat the Rams in a head-to-head. So we started 6-0, and then before we knew it, we were 6-2. And at that point, the Rams were 6-1, leading the division out of nowhere. But we got some help from the Raiders, actually, as they were 1-7 and took down the Rams last week to make the Rams 7-2. The Raiders advanced to 2-7 in a huge upset. The 49ers here at 5-5, still in the hunt. The Seahawks even still in the hunt here at 4-5. And even though the Snowhawks and Rams are at the top of the division last year, the Rams and 49ers were at the top heading into the home stretch, but it was still us and the Seahawks who ended up making the playoffs out of the division. So still a lot of time left in this season for things to change, but that is our standings check at this point, our playoff preview of how things currently stand. So we will now check out league leaders, and we are among the top in a few categories. Lucas McDonald is leading the NFL in passing yards at 2,692, but Dallas Cowboys quarterback Ben Davis is only 6 yards behind him, last year's Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he's had 24 less pass attempts, so his YPA about a half yard better right now than McDonald. But look at that interception ratio for McDonald, 25-4, undoubtedly having his best season so far. So Ben Davis is at second, Joe Burrow third in passing, Josh Allen fourth on a contract year with a 22-2 touchdown interception ratio, just astronomical there. Similar ratio to McDonald, but Patrick Mahomes at 34-4, that is just absurd, leading the NFL in passing touchdowns so far, completing 75%, and Mahomes, McDonald currently battling for the MVP award. Guys like Burrow, Allen currently in the mix as well. And then Anthony Richardson here in the top 10. Jordan Love at 7, 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, very good ratio. CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, good ratios here as well. And then Will Evans going to round out the top 10 with over 2,400, 26 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Brock Purdy right behind him. And Emmett Dalton, 21 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I thought the Browns would be in line for maybe drafting a quarterback, and they still might, just a 78 overall with normal development. But looking at the numbers, he's been phenomenal this season, his third year as the Browns starter, former second-round pick out of Miami. That was back in that year one offseason. He's also on an expiring contract, so we'll see. This quarterback situation could get very intriguing. There could be a lot of shakeup over the offseason, so I'm very interested in what happens there. Justin Herbert of the Chargers, Byron Snow, number 1 overall pick from the 2026 draft up here. Kyler Murray of the Titans, he's also on an expiring contract. Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Jared Goff, who also is on an expiring contract, so we could see the Lions move on to their second-round pick from last year in Glenn Shelton. He is expected to be the successor. Darren Anderson is currently the quarterback of the Raiders, but again, only a normal development, 78 overall improviser, so we could see them, I think, maybe draft Stephen Coles, that top quarterback in the class early on, as they're slated to have a very early pick. Lamar leads in completion percentage at 76. Mahomes, Burrow, Stroud all at 75%. Who leads in interceptions? That would be rookie quarterback Adrian Kincaid, second-round pick of the Panthers with 13. Murray, Deshaun Montieu was 6th overall to the Falcons. He was billed to be the next Michael Vick. He has 9. Davis with 9, Trevor Lawrence with 9, Derek Anderson with 8, and also Justin Fields here of the Steelers. I think they could be a team in line to draft a quarterback, maybe even the Saints as well. Although Michael Penix now in New Orleans, he's having a decent season. Going over to rushing leaders, Isaiah Pacheco, now up to a 99 overall running back. We're going to see him in the next episode. He's on pace for his 4th straight 1,000-yard season. He's been tearing it up in this franchise. Just signed an extension there to stay in Kansas City, as he's signed through the next 3 seasons following this campaign. Javonte Williams, still of Denver, one of 2 rushers to break 700 so far. Breece Hall, 3rd. Kenneth Walker, the 3rd. We see him a bunch. He's at number 4. And Dontrell Dixon of Cincinnati, now his 3rd season. Running back out of Texas, 84 overall, elusive back. 9 touchdowns, 3.8, although that has improved every season. His rookie year was at 2.8, although he did have 7 touchdowns on only 53 carries. Former second-round pick of the Longhorns. It looks like the Bengals have a decent back developing there. Josh Jacobs, Zach Charbonnet now of Minnesota, sitting at 6th. And our very own Tank Bigsby here at 7th on the rushing leaderboard with 532, although the yards per attempt at 3.3, very low. And he actually is going to miss next week against Kansas City with a dislocated shoulder. So we're going to see a lot of 6th-round rookie Manny Reynolds in that game. We're going to thrust him into a more prominent role, but we'll still see Vince Willis as our pass-catching back. Tajay Spears up here for the Titans. Lamar Hales, a 4th-year running back out of Texas for the Saints. So another running back out of Texas here towards the top. J.K. Dobbins, DeJuan Randolph. He's a rookie that the Patriots just drafted. He came back with hidden development there in the 4th round. 5'11", 232 with 92 speed, 84 strength, 90 carrying, 85 juke, 86 vision. This dude is just absurd. I'm really upset we missed out on him, but I did not envision him coming back as like a 77 overall draft pick. Already over 500 yards with 6 touchdowns. He was drafted 7th overall there in the 4th round, as the Patriots definitely got a good one. And he's already towards the top in NFL rushers, maybe in line for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And speaking of which, Nolan Kinley was last year's AFC Offensive Rookie of the Year at a Texas A&M, now up to an 83 overall last season with 12 touchdowns. The yards per attempt up a little bit, but the touchdown production down. But then we see some familiar faces down here. DeAndre Swift, Saquon Barkley, who was last year's rushing champion, but now buried down the list a little bit compared to where he's usually at. Kyron Williams. And Bijan Robinson, only 97 carries. I don't know why the Falcons refuse to give him the ball. That's only 9.7 carries per game. Someone has to get fired there in Atlanta. Devon Achane down here with 10 rushing touchdowns, which could be the league lead. Travis Etienne now of the Chargers. Bucky Irving signed an extension. Jahmyr Gibbs, his first season as a Carolina Panther, signed like a 6-year contract with them. Their production has not quite been there, but they have been improving. Definitely on the offensive line, they invested a lot, and I think they're going to start coming around. Over $100 million on that 5-year contract for Gibbs. And now looking at average leaders here, and among any player with 50 carries, Lucas McDonald actually leads the way, 6.3 yards per carry with 4 rushing touchdowns for our quarterback. But among running backs, it's going to be Isaiah Pacheco who leads the way. And like we said, we're going to see him in the next episode. Achane and Jonathan Taylor each with 10 touchdowns on the ground, tied for the league lead fumbles. 2 from Nakua, 2 from Breece Hall, and 2 from Kenneth Walker. As we'll now go over to receiving. And our very own Carlos Alvarez may be in line for a Triple Crown season. Far and away the leader in receptions with 70, leads the way with 983 receiving yards, and tied for second in receiving touchdowns with Rashee Rice, as Puka Nacua leads the way. But Alvarez was phenomenal last year, a first-round pick at Florida State. Went for over 1,100, along with 11 touchdowns. Already 10 touchdowns on the season, with 7 games left to play, just 1 away from matching that total, and only 6 catches away from matching last year's total of 76 receptions. And it seems like he's definitely in line to eclipse last year's receiving total, so Alvarez taking his game to another level as he currently leads the league. Braden Ayuk, his first year as a member of the Cleveland Browns, and he's been integral in the development of Emmett Dalton, the quarterback we saw, who's now towards the top of the league in passing yards. Ayuk, a lifelong 49er, but now in Cleveland, as he's set for another 1,000-yard season Let's see that contract. He signed a 4-year contract at about $30 million. As the Browns finally got a viable pass catcher. Puka Nacua here at third. Rashee Rice, we're going to see him in the next episode as that combination of Mahomes, Pacheco, and Rashee Rice, one of the best tandems in all of the NFL. Tennessee has Leo Presley up here in the top 5, which I would not expect, especially considering they drafted a receiver first overall a few years back. That was Roy McBride, but he's not the guy here leading the way right now. It's Leo Presley out of California, a former 5th-round pick, and he was also from that year 1 class. Jamar Chase here. Tracy Pryor of Atlanta, 4th-year man out of Syracuse. He's the top weapon for that rookie quarterback, Deshaun Monteau. We have Lad McConkey, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, who was, I think, 1st or 2nd last year, but now all the way down the board a little bit, kind of like Saquon among running backs. Wade Boone, a tremendous weapon here for the Bengals. He was a 1st-round pick from that year 1 class. He was Offensive Rookie of the Year over Lucas McDonald with 14 touchdown catches. Just a dynamite weapon with the ball in his hands. He was actually a 2nd-round pick, not a 1st-round pick. So they have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Wade Boone, which is one of the best wide receiver trios in all of the NFL. Boone also signed an extension. He's now up to a superstar, which brings us to Tank Dell, someone the Texans are reportedly shopping. Their cap situation is kind of getting out of hand, and they're more committed to Nico Collins. Amon-Ra St. Brown also usually among the top, but he slid down the board with the decline of Detroit. Treylon Burks now the Bills up here towards the top. Brian Thomas and Roy McBride. He was the number 1 overall pick we were talking about from that year 1 class. He's now up to an X factor, but he has yet to break 1,000 yards in a season. He did have 12 touchdown catches last year, but probably not living up to that number 1 overall pick billing. But at least the Titans' passing game does kind of seem to be on the come up at this point. 2nd in catches is Jordan Addison, and look at Travis Weldon here. We mentioned him as a potential target in this year's offseason. X-Factor tight end, only 24 years old at 86 overall, 86 speed, 90 catching, 96 catching traffic, 91 spec catch. He's not going to drop anything, but he's also not going to block anybody either, but that's not why you bring him to the team. Last year, 96 catches, 90 the year prior, but last year, 1,100 receiving yards plus, along with 6 touchdown catches, and Baltimore's cap situation, not the best, so he might be in line to hit the market. A 2-time Pro Bowler there for the Ravens. He's currently tied with Jamar Chase for 3rd most catches in the league. And the 2nd tight end here is Mark Andrews. Of course, we signed him formerly of the Ravens, so we could be in line to acquire our past 2 starting tight ends from the Ravens organization, hoping that they don't re-sign Travis Weldon. And touchdown catches, we saw Nacua and actually T. Higgins both with 11. And then it's Alvarez, Rashee Rice, and rookie Quincy Richards, also of Kansas City. He was a 1st-round pick from this past draft. The top tight end at 6'5", 251. Penn State alum, has over 500 receiving yards with 10 touchdowns. He's the successor there to Noah Gray, who turned into an X-Factor following the retirement of Travis Kelce. He has since signed with the Giants, and then Richards was drafted to replace him, and he is also thriving. So that Kansas City passing attack, we definitely have our hands full. You can't forget about Xavier Worthy either. And now going over to offensive line, Creed Humphrey, the most snaps played of any offensive lineman, only 1 sack allowed. He might be in line for best offensive lineman of the year, but right behind him is Ike Mekonwu, and he might have the most sacks allowed at 13, as he does, tied with Rasheed Walker of the Carolina Panthers. We'll go back to downs played, though, and you do not like to see that from Mekonwu, but at least we have Creed Humphrey up here. Also, Cade Moreland, our 3rd-year guard out of LSU, superstar offensive lineman at just 23 years old. He's going to be a staple on our team. We're set to exercise his 5th-year option, so we'll have him for the next 2 seasons after this year. And Randy Samuels also up here on the list, who just declined our contract extension offer. So we might have to bring him back in free agency, but a lot of guards up here for the most part. But Creed Humphrey leading the way, only 1 sack allowed on 741 snaps. And now defensively, Ernest Jones, the 4th, leads the league in tackles, 82 there for Seattle. Mack Wilson of the Titans with 81, 2nd. Fred Warner, 3rd on the list with 80. Last year, he led the league with 7 interceptions, only 2 so far, though one of those did come against us earlier in the season. Jack Campbell, now of the Bills, 75 tackles. Dre Greenlaw, longtime running mate of Warner, their 5th. As Robert Spillane, now of the Falcons, 6th on the list. Jelani Tavai tied with Peyton Wilson, both with 65. Also Cody Barton with 65. And then we see Quay Walker with 64. Standout linebacker for our Snowhawks, also has 4 TFLs, 2.5 sacks to go along with that. Tyrese Knight, now of Washington, up here with 63. Tremaine Edmonds as well. Jack Gibbons, former Snowhawk great, now of the Denver Broncos, 63 tackles for him. And Jerry Sexton up here with 62. Our 3rd-year linebacker out of UW, former Rookie of the Year, now up to an 85 overall. We'll check out the production. 4 TFLs, 2 sacks, also an interception, 6 pass deflections as well. Every season so far, he's had multiple interceptions. So he's going to have to get one here down the stretch to keep that streak going, and I think he will. He just has a nose for the ball. TFL leaders, Myles Garrett with 14, also 17 sacks to go along with that, as that also leads the league. But we also see Caleb Patton up here with 12 TFLs, 12 sacks. And as we said, we saw him decline our offer, so we're going to have to bring him back on a franchise tag and try and get an extension going with him after that. But he's currently setting the pace for all interior defensive tackles. Braden Fiske up here, Jared Verse, last year's Defensive Player of the Year. These two just always cause havoc against us. Derek Brown with 11, and a bunch of guys here with 10. Tavondre Sweat of Tennessee, Greg Rousseau, who the Bills just signed to an extension. We were hoping he would hit free agency last year. And also Taylor Goddard, our rookie here out of Tennessee. Defensive end, we selected him 21st overall, traded up with the Packers. He's now up to a 79 overall speed rusher. The finesse move already up to 87 with good speed, decent strength. And we want that block shed to improve a little bit. But even with just a 75 block shed, he is tearing it up so far. Also 8 sacks on the season. So we think he might be in line to hopefully win Defensive Rookie of the Year in the NFC. Ali McNeil now of Denver with 10. Jonathan Grenard also of the Snowhawks up here. And Zach Joseph, 3rd overall pick from last year's class. We were sitting there at number 3 in the draft. The Buffalo Bills traded all the way up from 23 for Joseph. They gave us 5 picks in total, including 2 first-rounders in last year as a rookie. Very disappointing, even in a Super Bowl winning season, but he's getting it going a little bit better this season with 10 TFLs, 3 sacks, as he had none of those during his entire rookie season. So good to see Zach Joseph getting going a little bit. And now sack leaders, Myles Garrett at the top with 17, Braden Fiske with 15.5, Caleb Patton with 12. We love to see him up here. Alex Highsmith of Pittsburgh, 10.5, Aiden Hutchinson with 10, currently ranking 5th in the league. And then going down the board, Jeremiah Owusu with 9.5, Latu with 9, tied with Jared Verse, and also Martin Marion, who's Latu's teammate there in Indy. Martin Marion now on an expiring contract, as he was part of that year 1 class. 12.5 sacks last season, now up to 9. It did take a little bit for him to get going, only 3 in his first 2 years combined. But I stand corrected. They actually did sign him to a 2-year, $25 million contract extension, Marion being from that year 1 class. So he's been developing nicely there as a pass rusher for the Colts, alongside Latu, TJ Watt, Kobe Turner also down here, Greg Rousseau, Taylor Goddard with 8. Among the league leaders, Ed Oliver, BJ Ojolari, Trayvon Walker. Steve Groves, also another defensive end drafted in this franchise. Now his 4th season out of Mississippi State. 9.5 last year, 7 this season. 4th overall pick from 2025. And last year made his first Pro Bowl. Now going over to interception leaders. DJ Reed leading the way with 4 right now. And then a bunch of guys here with 3. Greg Newsome of Cleveland. Trent McDuffie of Kansas City up to 99 overall. I believe going to see him next week, as their studs aren't only on the offensive side of the ball. Behind him is J.C. Horn of Carolina, Christian Harris of the Texans, a linebacker up here, as he's currently leading the linebackers. Sauce Gardner, Patrick Surtain, Javon Holland, now past deflections. Leading the way right now is Leo Chenal, who also has 2 interceptions, no sacks or tackles for loss though, so making more of an impact against the pass, which is kind of uncharacteristic, I think, for him. Of course, another guy we're going to see next week. And he is a run stopper, but I guess 87 pass coverage now up to an X factor. So 2 X factors there in the back 7 between McDuffie and Chenal, which is weird. He has no tackles for loss. So just mainly now dropping back into coverage, it seems, at this stage in his career. And that's crazy. He's leading the league in pass deflections, but all the pass deflection leaders up here are linebackers. Trevin Wallace of Indianapolis, Azeez Al-Shahir of Houston, and also Ernest Jones, who also leads the league in tackles right now. Jaquan McMillan now of Denver. He had a cup of coffee with our Snowhawks last year. Diamador Lenoir of San Francisco, and also Terrion Arnold, who also has 2 forced fumbles and 2 interceptions in addition to these 7 pass deflections. Very good starting season for him in Salt Lake City. And a couple other guys here. Fred Warner with 7, Tyrese Knight, and DeAndre Weber, now cornerback of the Kansas City Chiefs. Forced fumble leaders, we have 3 from Dre Greenlaw, and a couple guys here with 2. Bullard, Terrion Arnold, who we said, Neil Abraham, and Kyle Hamilton. Block kicks, we have 1 from Christian Barmore, 1 from Geno Stone, 1 from Jordan Brooks, and safeties, just 1 from Dallas Turner, and 1 from Chris Braswell, with no defensive touchdowns on the season. Our man Dre Patton, the rookie out of Butler, currently leading the way at 30.2 average, had that 58-yard kick return long against the Eagles. That's actually the longest kick return so far in the league this season. And punt returns, Emmanuel Rhodes, former 6th overall pick of the Browns, currently leading the way. No kick returns, touchdowns, no punt return touchdowns so far this season. And with that, we'll now take a look at the MVP race, Coach of the Year, the Rookie of the Year award races, as we definitely have some guys in contention. And I think McDonald might be in the MVP race as well. Mahomes currently the frontrunner trying to capture his third in the last 5 seasons of this franchise, Josh Allen. He's also had 2. They've split over the first 4 years. Mahomes did take the last year's MVP though, but Lucas McDonald here at third, right in the thick of it with Allen and Mahomes, who have combined for the last 4 MVP awards. Lamar Jackson also in the mix. And Emmett Dalton, we talked about him earlier for the Browns. He's also in the MVP race. Did not expect to see that, but with their success, you definitely have to throw his name in the mix. But we'll see how they close the season. Joe Burrow, Will Evans, Jordan Love also up here for Coach of the Year, though. John Gruden is leading. Only 13 wins combined in our first 3 seasons of this franchise, but 18 in the past 2. And Andy Reid, who he does have some experience coaching with back during their days with the Packers. They're going to be coaching against each other head-to-head on Monday Night Football in the next week. But going over to NFC Offensive Player of the Year, Carlos Alvarez is actually leading the charge right now. Our standout receiver, did not expect to see that with McDonald right behind him. And I figure the impact he makes on the ground definitely factors into that spot. So Defensive Player of the Year, it looks like Braden Fiskey, the Rams might repeat for Defensive Player of the Year, but Caleb Patton is right behind him, followed by Aiden Hutchinson, Jared Verse, and even rookie Taylor Goddard in the top 5 at the moment. You'll love to see that. Have to figure he's a favorite now for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Micah Parsons up here, Kobe Turner, Steve Groves of the Bucks, Fred Warner, and also Jonathan Grenard here rounding out the top 10. Rookie of the Year, though, Deshaun Montague, 6th overall pick to the Falcons. We knew that was probably coming. Ladarius James, first-round receiver to the Niners. The man drafted to replace Ayuk, and then also Darrell Williams drafted to replace Jahmyr Gibbs. He's 3rd in the running. Quarterback Adrian Kincaid, we saw he leads the league in interceptions, but he's 4th, followed by John Ayers, Cecil Dorsey, Oscar Gales. All these guys, not really sure who they are, although Quinn Avery was a first-round pick of the Eagles, and also Tyrese Gray was a top 10 pick, but it looks like his production hasn't quite been there. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Taylor Goddard is the front-runner. You got to expect he's going to win it at his current pace, but Eric Woodard, 3rd-round pick of the Rams out of Florida, he's having a great year and also came back as superstar development, and also Jalen Langford here, 3rd-round pick, having a great year at middle linebacker there for the Vikings. And also Dakota Michaels is in the mix. I wasn't even thinking about him as someone in contention, but he does have 2 interceptions, some pass deflections, some tackles for loss. So if he keeps up that production, he might be in the running there alongside Taylor Goddard now. We'll get down to the positions real quick. McDonald leading for best quarterback running back right now looks to be Josh Jacobs. Kyron Williams. Tank Bigsby is currently 3rd best receiver. You got to think it's going to be Carlos Alvarez, especially if he wins the Triple Crown at the position. Devontae Smith, CeeDee Lamb, Tracy Pryor, DK Metcalf up here. Best O-line currently looks to be Creed Humphrey. Even Seth Rosenthal is down here, our backup center. I'm not sure why he's up there. Definitely does not have the downs played to be in consideration. Fiskey, best defensive lineman, followed by Caleb Patton. Taylor Goddard at 4th on this list, followed by Grenard at 7. Our defensive line is just tearing it up. Best linebacker looks to be Jared Verse, Micah Parsons, Brian Burns here. Of course, a couple of these guys just straight up pass rushers, not really off-ball guys. Best defensive back. Last year we had it with Nathan Scruggs. Right now J.C. Horn is leading, followed by Terrion Arnold, his first year as a Snowhawk. We also have Dakota Michaels up here at 6, and best kicker looks to be Jake Bates. And now to close this episode, we are just going to do a little Week 10 preview, or I guess a Week 11 preview. What is it? What week are we in? We're going to be in Week 11 next episode, episode 50 of this expansion franchise, where we're going to be taking on the 8-1 Kansas City Chiefs. Not only is it a battle of the top 2 teams in the NFL, it's also an MVP race between McDonald and Mahomes. It might be the first time these 2 players have met in their NFL careers. McDonald trying to win his first MVP and first Super Bowl trophy. Mahomes already has multiple of those. He's, of course, a 99 overall now at 32 years old. And as I mentioned, he's won 2 MVPs over the course of this franchise. He's exactly who you think he is, with just every trait pretty much at 97 or above, a couple there at 91, 93. But we have our hands full with Mahomes alone, but the rest of the offense complements him extremely well with 99 overall running back Isaiah Pacheco. We saw the leader right now in rushing in the NFL. 99 carrying, 99 spin, acceleration. The speed is good. Good break tackle and strength. And we're going to have our hands full stopping him as well. And then receiving, they have Rashee Rice, who's currently, I think, top 5 in receiving yards. Now 28 years old out of SMU. He had 20 touchdowns last season, 19 the year before. So over the course of this franchise, not even a full 5 years in, he has 79 touchdown catches. And he's gotten over 1,100 yards every season so far. And I remember they signed him to a long-term extension a few years back. We were hoping he hit the market, but he's owed like $80 million over the next 2 seasons. So a lot of money headed his way, and he's probably been worth every cent. And then his great compliment here, Xavier Worthy, 89 overall deep threat, 98 speed, 99 acceleration. You have Rashee Rice, who can beat you really in every phase. Xavier Worthy, very much of the same, but more of that player who's going to stretch the field, beat you over the top. We'll take a look at his production. Has never broke 1,000 yards, and he actually does not even have a catch of over 43 yards in his career so far, but still very good, steady production next to Rashee Rice. And we know the tight ends in this offense also have a very big focus, and every receiver behind them are either a rookie or in their second season. And Andrew Williams out of LSU is the third receiver on this team. No stats last year as a rookie, but this year so far, 41 for 449, 5 touchdowns. He was a second-round pick last year out of LSU. Another guy with very good speed at 94, but the route running obviously very raw. Although I feel like he has kind of formed a nice third option in the receiving core behind Rice and Worthy. But Quincy Richards, their star rookie tight end, just 21 years old. He's currently tied second in the league with 10 touchdown catches. Also has over 500 yards, 46 receptions. He was the 29th overall pick out of Penn State, as he enriches a very storied tight end history there for the Chiefs. Now going over to the offensive line. Last year, entering free agency, they had to re-sign 4 of their 5 starting linemen, including Kingsley Suamataia at left tackle, Joe Thuney at left guard. They lost Creed Humphrey. Of course, we were the beneficiary there. We signed him to a 4-year deal. At right guard, they were forced to re-sign Trey Smith, which they did. They got 3 of those 4 guys back. Also, Wyatt Preston now at right tackle. His third year out of Florida at 6'7", 340. His second year as the starter, though. Former first-round pick back in the year 2 offseason. So he's their starter at right tackle. At left tackle, as we said, they re-signed him. We'll see the contract they gave him, as it was a 2-year extension at about $44 million. Tremendous run blocker there on that left side, but a little bit weaker there against the pass, especially against the finesse rusher. They're coming off their right side of the defense, which it should be Taylor Goddard most of the way. At left guard, Joe Thuney now entering his 13th season. He's at a superstar, 90 overall, aging like a fine wine, but probably in his final season or two, going for one last ring here with Kansas City. And then at center, pretty weak. They were not really able to fulfill that vacancy left behind by Creed Humphrey. And they got Sam Conaway in his spot, a 4th-year player. And he's been on as many teams in that span, which is pretty crazy to see. Formerly undrafted out of Mississippi State, but now the starting center for the Kansas City Chiefs. At right guard, Trey Smith, 94 overall, superstar. So 2 of the 3 interior linemen are at superstar. Both are tackles, at least 80 overall. So pretty good up front. Just, of course, that weakness at center. But Trey Smith very well balanced, although that pass block finesse, a clear blemish, but everything else in the 90s. So he's an absolute lockdown right guard. We saw Wyatt Preston at right tackle. Now going over to defense, George Karlaftis actually going to be out next week, so we'll definitely take that on an ACL sprain. Going to be a target for us in free agency if the Chiefs are unable to re-sign him. So in his spot is James Dawkins, rookie superstar. He was a 4th-round pick out of Boise State. Already 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, so definitely appearing to be a diamond in the rough. And he was actually a 6th-round pick. Now, going back, I do remember we had him on our board because he was a projected undrafted free agent, but came back with around 3 to 4 draftable grade, and we were lining up to take him there in that 6th round, but he went a few picks before us, as the Chiefs got an absolute steal there. A superstar in the 6th round, you really don't see that very often. 89 strength with 80 speed, 82 power move, although the block shed very low at 59, but all things considered, you'll definitely take him for where he was drafted. Abilities right now has unfakeable, and the Chiefs scouting department definitely got a hit there. Like I said, a superstar in the 6th round is almost unheard of, as he's going to get the start in place of the injured George Karlaftis. Right end is Rashawn Hardy, a little bit weak there. And then at D tackle, they have Larry Fowler, who's developed into one of the best D tackles over the course of this franchise. 7 sacks so far this season, 4.5 last year, 7.5 the year prior, and then 3 as a rookie. 1st-round pick out of Miami back in year 1. And I think they did sign him to an extension. Signed him to a 1-year, $17 million extension. So maybe someone that will hit the market here in a couple years. But looking at the traits, 97 strength, 89 block shed, 88 finesse move, so can stop the run, can get after the pass there with a good finesse move, and only 24 years old with very good size at 6'6", 318. Larry Fowler, kind of dominant presence up there up front. Then they also traded for Chad Johnson, who's 6'2", 410 pounds. He spent his 2+ years there as a draft pick of the Chicago Bears with 95 strength, only 55 speed though. But he's just up there to really eat up running lanes and trying to eat up double teams as well. Not much production with Chicago, formerly a 3rd-round pick out of Penn State. Hopefully forms a nice tandem there with Larry Fowler, as Chiefs offering a pretty good defensive line, especially when Karlaftis is out there now going to the linebacking core. We saw Leo Chenal among the top leaders here in pass deflections. I think he also had a couple interceptions, but no tackles for loss, no sacks. Hopefully he doesn't add his first in the next game at middle linebacker. They have Nick Bolton still here with the Kansas City Chiefs, now to an 88 overall at 28 years old. Over 100 tackles last time for the first time since he had 171 back in 2022. That's just absolutely absurd, as a nice tandem there with Chenal. And at right outside linebacker, a couple guys here, Curtis and Stan Snowden. And then at cornerback, they have Trent McDuffie, a 99 overall superstar. Another very good player on this defense, as he headlines their back end. Pretty much everything there in the 90s, 98 man, 96 zone, 99 play rec. Just an absolute dynamo there at cornerback for the Chiefs, and he has a nice running mate now, DeAndre Weber, a former first-round pick of the Steelers, only 24 years old. They traded him to the Chiefs, and he's forming in quite nicely there alongside McDuffie. Weber was the 26th overall pick back in the 2026 draft. We'll take a look at his ratings real quick. I remember him during the draft process, but up to 95 speed with 98 acceleration, 88 man, 86 play rec. So it looks like they definitely run a man scheme. I know they're a base 4-3, and they have a decent third corner here. Jalen Watson, veteran, at 83 overall. Now at safety, they have Tony Shaw, 87 overall out of Penn State, 25 years old, a draft pick from that year one class. And he already has 2 interceptions, matching his total from the past 2 seasons. Former third-round pick, was the first pick in the third round in that year one NFL draft. And at strong safety, they actually have Tommy Elliott, another superstar they've drafted. So they're just absolutely littered with superstars all across the field on both sides of the ball, with 90 speed, 86 zone, 81 pursuit, 86 man as well. Tommy Elliott was like a pick before us that year in the draft. The Chiefs took him. We took his teammate Dale Gilmore in the following selection, also a safety, but they ended up with the guy with superstar development. And also Justin Reed, safety here, a veteran, has now been supplanted by the youngster here in Tommy Elliott. So I think Reed probably going to be a cap casualty here coming the offseason, but definitely a nice veteran presence still to have on your team for the final stretch. But this is where I'm going to leave you, folks. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's not the most exciting episode, but year 5, I wanted to kind of get more coverage around the NFL, get acclimated with some of these generated players we are now playing with and playing against in this franchise. Also, Manny Reynolds is going to be our starting running back next week in place of the injured Tank Bigsby. 70 overall power back at 5'11", 221 out of California. 91 speed, 81 strength with 86 stiff arm, 85 carrying, and overall the traits aren't that bad. Pretty good overall, but of course more of that power back as opposed to what we're used to in Tank Bigsby, who definitely has that power element, but he is an elusive back by archetype. But a huge episode now coming up, episode 50 of this Snowhawks expansion franchise, and it's a big one. The top 2 teams in the NFL set for battle, maybe a preview of what's to come here in Super Bowl 63 as our Snowhawks trying to return, but trying to win it this time, and Lucas McDonald looking for his first MVP award in the process. But as always, everybody, it's been real, and be well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.